I mean, this is, it's crazy. We've been trying to put together a group thing with all of us since this came out in November, and here we are. And I think we're here to talk about the making of it. And I showed a little bit of the tech before, but this is really just about our personal experience, the things we went through, the things we were doing. And Carlos, as a director of the piece, we've been doing 4 of these, right? Maybe you can start and just take things from there. I mean, as a director, what was your thinking and take on all this as we were putting this together?
Yeah. Well, so I have been doing a few pieces Star Trek related with Jules since January 2022.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Mike,
Is your mic?
Oh, my mic is not. Okay.
There we go.
Can you hear me? So yeah, for the last 3 years, we've been working on these smaller pieces, 765, 874 together, and what has been great is that Jules has educated me about Star Trek, and a lot of other people as well. But at one point, when we finished the last one, you told me the inception of the idea,
right,
the seed of this moment, and I just really like, the thought of putting a personal touch to idea that was so meaningful to people like Jules that grew up with Star Trek, for me to kind of hopefully also make it more universal and more of a human story. And we started working, and that was most of last year.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, a huge part of this project was bringing Kirk back and getting Mr. Shatner's approval and guidance on it. And as I mentioned in my earlier talk, there was a discussion that we had where he had seen the early tests with Sam with the digital prosthetics and decided that rather than him being on set for Generations Kirk, it should be Sam. And I mean, you've spoken so eloquently about what it's like for an actor to work with this technology that we were literally building around you. We started with both Larry and Sam 2 years ago when the face mapping technology, you used to have to put dots on people's faces. Now we don't need to do that. Now we can apply basically these CG digital prosthetics live. But one thing we learned was from you as actors of what to do. And I mean, Sam, describing that, because Kirk looks amazing in this. Even Shatner, when we screened it, he's asking, how did you guys do this in the end? I mean, Robin, you were there for that, right? As an actor, I would love to hear what your experience has been and your journey with us on this.
Absolute terror. You're going to be playing Captain Kirk, but not just Captain Kirk. You're going to be playing Bill Shatner as Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
And when you first said to me, "We think you're Captain Kirk,"
I knew it.
And I was like, "I think you're crazy.
And I was like,
there's
no,
nothing about me that is Captain Kirk." And then I remember, I'll never forget, you showed me this little thing, and I thought, okay, well, that's because I'm a big Star Trek and big Shatner fan, so I saw this picture, and I'm like, well, that's from The Intruder, which is, he did that before Star Trek, and I saw Shatner, and he was in a white suit, coiffed hair, looking all 60s, but it was in color, because The Intruder was shot in black and white, and this photo was in color, and I'm like, so wait, how did you get a color photo this quality from The Intruder? He's like, because that's not The Intruder, that's you, from something you shot. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I am Captain Kirk, So I at that point, you said, okay, well, you get together with Clay Sparks and Mike Ashton and the crew and figure out how to build on what Larry had established to create Captain Kirk, and also to help develop, I was developing my technique to work with your technology. You guys were developing your technology to work with my techniques.
Yeah.
And I was teaching you guys about acting. You guys were teaching me about what the technical requirements were. And then we worked for a year, coming in every few weeks, trying things to get it good enough to show Mr. Shatner, with the thought that if Mr. Shatner didn't like it, it was going to go away. That was it. We had a nice little
we
run.
wouldn't have done it if you said, I don't love it. I mean, we almost didn't do it. I remember having that conversation. It's like, if he doesn't like what these early tests were not, it's off,
Yeah, and so we did all kinds of stuff, including, recreations of scenes or monologues that no one's heard before, all kinds of different things to show Mr. Shatner. He saw it, and strangely enough, he liked it. And then we were off to the races on this project, which was then, you know, we'd already done a year of terror, and then there was half a year of terror on this project going forward from there. So it was, but the fact that he felt so strongly about it, and that he was so supportive, and that he enjoyed it, I remember all of that terror just dropping away instantaneously once the audience responded to it, once Shatner responded to it. And I remember for the first time I finally got to watch the piece as an audience member, because I'd been seeing it over and over again, but from the point of view of the terror means I don't want to mess this up. He doesn't want to mess this up. No one wants to mess this up. So that's, you know, Jules certainly doesn't want to mess this up. So that's the terror. And then finally when people accepted it, that all dropped away, and I got to watch the piece as just a fan. And that's the first time that it ever made me cry, because I was watching Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. It was kind of an incredible experience.
Yeah. And Robin, you were there. You were there with us and Bill, and when Bill saw it for the first time.
Oh, my goodness.
It was crazy.
I can't even be around these gentlemen without tissues in my hand, or even talk about this project without becoming emotional. There's just something about you, Jules, and your love of Star Trek, and Bill's courage, and you introduced him in a way that made him comfortable to lean in. This amalgamation, you know, of such talents, Carlos as the director with his humility and his tenderness, and he didn't have to understand Star Trek to bring the warmth and the love and to understand what was going on in the storytelling, and for you to have given Saavik, for those of you who know Star Trek canon, you know Saavik kind of got left on Vulcan with a very juicy plot tidbit left on the cutting room floor, and that was that she was pregnant with Spock's child. And it, you know, always made me a little sad. I grieved at the time that would not be developed. And for you to have given her that, and for your team, the caliber of Otoy's team, Mildred with my costume, I remember the day they put me in it. You know, I said, I got an email in January of 2024. Did I want to come out and play? And I didn't even understand what they were inviting me to. I just wrote back, yes, I want to come out and play. And so when I did come to you in June, I didn't even know what the hell I was going to be doing. I sincerely didn't. And suddenly I'm wearing this dreamy, regal dress that Mildred had made, and the wig and the aged makeup. And I thought, oh my God, you've given Saavik a life. You've given her a life. And in this 8-minute film, to which I have, you know, I made a small contribution, you gave me a story. You gave Saavik a benediction of sorts, or a coda, if you will. And I'm all over the place here, but these actors, I can't admire them enough for their dedication to you, to Leonard Nimoy, and you to Bill Shatner, and making them true. Their mannerisms, their body language, etc. What a commitment you all made. Just was convinced beyond convinced, and then Carlos, your artistry, and Jules, the means, the know-how. Rod, thank you for letting this happen. Yeah, this was a gift to me of a magnitude I can't even express.
Well, likewise. I mean, you know, and I'll add a little bit of the story too, which is that, you know, when I was, you know, inspired to the story, I knew that working backwards, right? If it's a goodbye for Kirk and Spock at the end, and again, we haven't, you know, it's not necessarily meant to be taken literally, but if there were something where Kirk is going to go see Spock, you know, what family would Spock have there that would have seen him, that would say, permission to go, and it would have been his child, his wife, you know, and of course they were married. I mean, we filmed the scene with you and Larry, right, of Spock and Saavik's wedding from the novels, and so that was what played into it, and you were amazing. I mean, it was just this magical thing we didn't expect to have happen, but I think the interaction with Kirk and Saavik was absolutely incredible and turned out beautifully, and it was amazing, and it's such a blessing to have you in the project and to make what we did just wonderful. And Larry, my goodness. So Lawrence Selleck, Larry, I mean, I think it was Darren that first, you know, connected us. And Darren, I think, said, I have the perfect Spock, you know, because we were talking about I mean, and just for everyone to understand, like, you know, the archive itself is an interactive experience. These are stories we're telling within that experience, because like anything, story is everything, right? And so we started off very early with almost testing. Could we have recreations of things, you know, Spock's speech from the cage, and then as you know, these shorts became more their own narrative, you know, we started to get more ambitious. But I mean, you know, Larry, you're the first person to really, you know, test this digital prosthetics tech, and I'd love to just get your experience, just what your background is a little bit, also just how it's been, how you felt, you know, carrying on the mantle of portraying Spock, even in the pieces we've done.
What's amazing to me, I mean, talk about a gift. You want to talk about a gift?
Well,
You know, as like so many people, as a kid playing Kirk and Spock, I was playing Spock. To have this opportunity to not only, you know, I had dreamed, oh, someday maybe I'll see the sets up in Ticonderoga. Maybe someday I'll, you know, touch some of the things that are part of my growing up and my whole life. And the day that I saw myself as Spock, I thought in a way driving Spock in a way. It was the strangest thing. I just saw a little clip on a cell phone. Oh yeah, well we did a render test, and you know, have you seen this yet? No, here, take a look. And I was doing some lines from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, even without any audio. It was just this little video clip, and it was Spock, and it was me. No, it is. Oh my God! And I spent literally 20 minutes pacing around with my hands on my head. I could not get over this experience. It will stay with me my entire life. And then when the technology improved, and it's like, oh, well, now it's real time, which they didn't tell me. I walk into a room, they have a camera set up and a big monitor, and I see, oh, well, there's Leonard Nimoy, and, you know, in some backs, you know, behind the scenes, whatever, he's just wearing a jacket, he's wearing my jacket. And I start to smile, and I look exactly like he does in the behind the scenes. And then, of course, the fun comes in. Well, what can I make him do this? Wait, no. Let me do some eyebrows. No, let me try all this. I could do that forever. And it shakes you. You start to forget who you are. And then at some point, you step in front of a mirror and you go, yeah, okay, I'm me. I'm not him. It is the wildest, weirdest experience. And I will say that doing this film, that moment of looking up into your face, Sam, and seeing Kirk, and our hands holding and turning and looking to see the last thing that Spock will ever see. I get chills now just thinking back on it. To be part of that, to be inside that, it's the most amazing thing I've ever experienced, let alone watching it afterwards.
yeah. I mean, beautiful. I mean, I had a similar experience too. You know, I mean, for me, I've always, I mean, yeah, as Rod knows, I mean, I've loved Star Trek. I've always been so passionate about it, and it was a dream to even do anything with the archive itself, and then getting into this and sort of growing out the way that the narrative stuff we're doing. It's been crazy, and you're right. I mean, for me, what's important about Unification is it shows the humanity, the artistry, and the tech is just, you know, there to get us there. And we you know, part of what I wanted to also talk about is we filmed so much of this practically. I mean, you know, we could have done more maybe in CG, but you know, the park scene was filmed in Huntington with a full crew and everything. And I think that you know, I definitely was aware, and there's certainly, you know, there's a lot of chatter, and people genuinely loved Unification. I mean, it's like you look at the comments on YouTube, there are 7,000 people that cried, and I mean, it was incredible. We didn't expect this feedback. But I think part of what I was very proud of is that we did film it, you know, and I think that I kind of sense also that, you know, this year there's going to be so much stuff with AI and all these things. I wanted to make sure that we did a piece that was not just true to Star Trek and everything, and the artistry of it, but also that where we could, we shot it practically. We did things. I mean, I'm that way too. Like, I like seeing physical models versus CG, even though I run a CG company. And I think that was something that was pretty, that grounded it a lot. And I mean, just the experience of shooting things practically, I think, was why I wanted to treat this like a film. It was a SAG production. And I would love to talk to you about just your ideas for the set design. The storyboards you did almost from the beginning were approved by Shatner and Nimoy Paramount. And maybe talk a little bit about the production side of things that led us through the shoot.
Yeah. So this work now?
Yeah.
And I wanted to add to what they've been saying. I know that sometimes there's a focus on the technology, which is very valid and needed in many cases. But for me, one of the things I was the most impressed was the amount of research and studying and just pure knowing of all these three characters, to the point that we started talking at one point about, well, what age is Kirk at this point? And given that age, what level of maturity is Kirk having, or Spock? And to me, that's just like next level acting. And you can have the most incredible director. Like, if you don't have incredible actors, you got nothing. So to me, like, always, credit where credit is due. Yeah. About your question, like, I start with storyboards. My background is in animation. So we do a lot of work in storyboards and editing, even almost parallel to the writer doing stuff. And for me, with the storyboards, I got a story artist named Ahmed. He's in France. And I've worked with him a few times, and I love his sensibility because it's very, there's an edge, I guess, if I can put it that way, to his work. And he would start giving me panels based on our conversations about the story. And for me, the first time that I start to see where a film has some sort of life is on the editing. For me, editing is almost like an extension to the directing, in the sense that you put one music and it becomes that film. You put a completely other music and then it's a whole other film. If you add all of the other elements, then you start to basically feel the film. And throughout that process, I will show you the pieces, like each of the versions.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it, and then you will give me more notes on a story, things that we could do, characters that are, maybe we might not want to use that character, things that are more Star Trek related.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the...
And you envisioned, you blocked it out in a beautiful way. I rember one of the things that we were trying to figure out at the beginning was, I imagined that it was, Saavik and Sorak, her son, on like a cliff or a bluff, and that Kirk would sort of pop in and or wake up or awake as we should him, but be teleported there. And I was like, we can't film this, we can't. And it was, I think your idea of Big Fish, right, was the inspiration for that scene in the park. I'm like, that's exactly what we should do. And I always thought the Huntington was, I wanted to film at Mackinac Island, which would have been crazy, but as you guys had seen, we did, the larger park was in CG, Aaron Westwood, amazing, Octane for C4D. But the idea of that Big Fish thing was why we had it set up that way, and it worked really nicely, and it was a beautiful, element. And Sam, I think the other thing people know for the credits, you're a producer on the film, and you provided feedback throughout the process on a lot of the creative decisions. I think even some of the stuff that informed how Kirk just felt. It came from a deeper thing than just acting him out, and also, again, you brought in Dave Collins and Skywalker sound worked on the project. That led to, by the way, us getting a connection with Michael Giacchino, who's a huge Star Trek fan, and basically insisted on doing the music. And it's been amazing. And you, also an amazing sound designer. You guys worked together on getting the music right. But also, the Skywalker sound piece was a big part of the story as well. And Sam, just talk about all of the different elements that outside of just playing, Kirk, that were, coming in from your side of things.
Well, in terms of the production, and again, Carlos gave us all this wonderful credit. But what was really fun was that Carlos would show up with lines, very simple lines, because we had to figure out what these moments were. You know what I mean? If he looks over here, it does this. Every move has to mean something. And so we got very specific. At first, we weren't that specific. We just shoot something, and no one was really in sync about what it meant. And then we got really specific with each other of like, this moment means this. He moves his hand, and this means this. And that was important because I remember on one of the test shoots that we had, we did, you weren't, this was a particular test shoot that you weren't there for, but he was there, and you said, okay, go over to the fountain and talk to Yor. And I remember watching the playback and just being, it really illustrated what we could get wrong. And that is, I walked over, it looked like Kirk, but it didn't feel like Kirk. And it was realizing that you're like, well, you know, it's because I sort of passively walked over to Yor rather than strode over like Captain Kirk, because William Shatner has never walked into a scene passively in his entire life.
Right.
There's always such intention to everything that he does. Yeah. And so realizing that made us get really hyper specific about what every little moment means. Or when he met Saavik, you know, that we had to create it was essentially an obstacle that Kirk didn't know quite where he was and what was going on to a certain extent. Like he was heading, like the dream logic was fading away into the background, and he was trying to figure out what was going on. And Saavik is the guide that she presents her son and then points him toward the fountain. And then Kirk reasons, my God, if this is your son, well then Spock's over there. And he realizes, oh, I understand I understand the task before me now. And he realizes this is going to be hard. This is going to be difficult emotionally. So figuring out what those obstacles were, the things that got in his way, and what he had to figure out to get to the next part, if you didn't do that, it wasn't going to feel like Captain Kirk. You could get away with that with a lot of other characters, but not Captain Kirk. You know, he had to hit a wall and figure his way around it, because that's what he does. You know, always. So that was really fun working with you to try to figure out what each little moment was. And I remember for the moment with Larry, that you came in with these lines, and you had a little joke. You had Spock make a little logical joke, to which we all were like, well, then you're going to raise the eyebrow, right? Like he made us joke, well, Spock's going to lighten the mood with the way that Spock knows how to lighten the mood. And you did it so beautifully with this tiny little curl of a smile on the corner of your lips after you raised the eyebrow and lightened up the mood heading toward the sunset. You know, all of these little moments were very deliberate to try to get you to the next piece, you know. But anyway, I'm sorry. About the other stuff, bringing in David Collins was, you know, essential because David is also an actor, and he's a musician, and he's all of these things as in addition to sound designer and mixer, and he's worked on Star Wars forever. And I've worked with him every year for 17 years. And so he was able to make the piece have that voice, that character. And he worked extensively with you to design the soundscape of what it is that we were going into. One of the things that he added that I just was so happy about was that when you see the original series Kirk, the 35-year-old Kirk, and he, you know, older Kirk becomes young Kirk, and he looks around, and you can hear in the background, very slightly, you can hear the Enterprise. You hear which he pulled out of a library, and he said, no, Enterprise has got to make an appearance in this. You know, you saw the salsa section of 1701D. We need to hear the old girl, you know, and so he threw that in the background, and you were instrumental in telling him exactly where to place it once you saw what he was doing. You know, that mix at Skywalker was really fun.
It's amazing.
Incredible, in fact. Everyone left so on a high. And we got to watch it in the Stag Theater at Skywalker after we mixed it, which was absolutely incredible. It's a theater that George Lucas designed to be the standard by which they tested all of their mixes, all of their visuals. And we got to watch our piece in there to see how it stood up. And I don't know if you guys were aware, but there were a lot of Lucasfilm people who were sniffing around going, is Star Trek back in the building? What's going on here? We hear there's Star Trek happening here. And they were all very, very curious about that. And of course, getting Michael Giacchino on board and getting him very excited. And he worked faster. Because I kept saying to you, I'm like, you got to, I mean, this guy's busy as hell. We got to give him a lot of time, got to get him a lot of time. And virtually the moment we agreed to work together and you guys talked and you worked out what these things were, he did it in so quickly. Because I think because he didn't have time, he's like, well, if I got to do it, I got to do it right now. So he just created.
Yeah.
And it was amazing too, because he was able to capture the heart.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put all these things like with all the different aspects of the production, but I always feel like the composers are really the invisible writers of the emotion. You know, if the music doesn't hit you, like, then something is missing. And Michael, within the second, or I think the second pass, it was the one where it was just like, okay, that there's not much to change here.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, when you were putting in the temp music, it was his music, right? And then you didn't even imagine necessarily it would ever be him doing the final track, and then it all came together. And I have one little fun tidbit of story to add about Michael is that he's like, well, there's somebody that wants to see this piece before it goes out. And I'm like, who? He's like, Kevin Feige. So he set up a Zoom call with Kevin Feige, him and me. And because Kevin Feige is a huge Star Trek fan. I think, Darren, you've interviewed him on your show. You know, it's like they hired Terry to go work on, Terry House to go work on Marvel stuff. And it's funny, I mean, he loved everything. By the way, he said when he saw you, this is a big part. He's like, oh my God, it's Saavik, and he was blown away. And the thing I want to point out is that out of all of us, you're playing the original character. You're playing yourself. None of us are part of any of the original Star Trek. But you are. That was a big part of the grounding element. You also are the one to tell Kirk his son is dead in Star Trek 3. I mean, so when they have that interaction, right, where he's seeing Saavik's son, there's a shared moment of that. It's such a powerful thing.
Beautiful thing of Saavik presenting her son who only exists because Kirk's son died to save her. And you just, so that, how do you jam that into a look?
Yeah.
And by the way,
they did
the
it.
idea. That's
That was the beautiful thing. They actually pulled it off, and that's, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think, Robin, I mean, you were, when you were playing Saavik and Leonard was directing you, I'd love to just hear your take on that, because I mean, it's like, again, you can speak to the fact that you were in the original Star Trek playing this character and then connecting it to this. Like, what was that like back on that set in that moment?
Well, back in the day, he grounded me. I said to him the first day, you seem to think I know what I'm doing here. I'm 28 years old, I'm on my first major motion picture, and I'm there to be unemotional, which is sort of the antithesis of who I am naturally. And I said, Mr. Nimoy, you seem to think I have a hang of this, but I don't. And he said, I'll take you every step of the way. So there was a little bit of a rudderlessness, if you will, coming out and playing with you guys all these years later, because I felt such a commitment to Mr. Nimoy. I mean, he really did. He baby stepped me through that entire film. Even line delivery, all of it, where to breathe, where not to breathe, etc. He was a lovely director, a very sensitive director, and the perfect person to guide me to be a Vulcan. And so when Carlos and Sam and I were working on this very emotionally packed moment, I kept thinking Leonard's on my shoulder, and I hope he's okay that I'm just letting a little more out than I think he might have allowed. But I gotta do it because this is big, and it felt right. I was taking advantage of you a little bit, Carlos, and perhaps your lack of the knowledge of Star Trek to bring more emotion than maybe Saavik would have had. But I also thought to myself, well, dozens and dozens of years have gone by, and I think maybe now she's able to be.
Could I ask you a question as a fan?
Emotional. Yeah. What?
Star Trek
Sure.
fan. Hi.
Sure.
I would like to hear more about that moment because, I'm sure Carlos would agree, without specifically the emotional tone that you hit, and then Mark making the decision to weep as a Vulcan, did you two discuss that? Did you coordinate?
No.
How did we arrive at that? Because ultra Star Trek nerds like you and me, we saw what they were doing and we're like, yep. How? Because Vulcans are not supposed to do that. And yet, when we saw this, we're like, well, the enormity of the moment means that you have to have this. In fact,
it's also in the novels, at least from the scripts, half Romulan, I think.
half Romulan, and
So-
you know, and
That's what I read before
Yeah.
the shoots. The half.
It was never shown
Yeah.
on screen, but it was.
his son would be part human, part Romulan, half Vulcan.
Yeah, it's like
you know.
quarter of Vulcan. Yeah.
So the rules are.
That's the beauty for me as not having been grown up of Star Trek. I love that there is a struggle.
You and Nick Meyer both, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like one side is fighting to release these feelings and emotion, and the other one is like, but I have to like let it out.
So how? I would love to hear more about that moment because.
Well, you,
Without it, it
right.
doesn't work. Without it, you see these people, you would not understand that this is a memorial moment, that this is somewhat of a celebration of life, or even pieces of a funeral in this moment.
Yeah.
Without you and Mark, and specifically you guiding the proceedings, you don't understand any of that in the film without you. So what did you do? Because I would just took it for granted. I'm like, yep, it's perfect.
Honest to
Great.
God, Sam, I can't claim any deep know-how in this moment. And the gentleman Mark Chinnery, who played Sarek, Sorak, excuse me, my son, he and I had no collaboration at all. I didn't realize he teared up.
Yes.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
It was Carlos, really, that he was the conductor, so to speak. And he, well, do you mind if I say?
Yeah.
You spoke about, you had lost a parent. Was it your dad or your mom?
My dad.
Dad, that's what I thought. And he spoke of when they would go to the hospital to his father's last days. The family would line up because they only allowed so many people in the room, and they would line the hallway, and so there would be this walk, to get to his dad and to be by his side. And he tried to make the wonderful people playing Vulcans in that group to understand that this, as Sam was just saying a moment ago, this is last call. This is we are at a person's deathbed, and so I need that solemnity. I need that depth of feeling, and so it was everything coming from Carlos, really, Sam. And I worried that I was too emotional, but I did feel as though I took the liberty. And I knew Jules would pull me back if I was out of line. Do you know what I mean? I felt like you were the backstop, perhaps, for something.
As Carlos says, I was like,
Having
this
to
is
do
not
with
what Star
integrity.
Trek. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, but also, again.
So many times I've done that with
You
Jules.
also
Is
played.
that to Star Trek or is that not to Star Trek?
Oh, Jules, let's be clear. Jules was specific. If there was a detail that pinged him,
Yeah.
he was not shy. Well, that's what he was there for. Even Kirk and Spock's hand clasp needed to be
reference from the motion picture.
to be essentially referenced in the motion picture, but it needed to be a little different, right? So it needed to be both, and so it needed to be kind of perfect, and we did that over and over again to get what is that moment, but also what's the next level of that moment. And then you said, well, then he should take his other hand, and we should change it up.
That's one of my favorite things.
And now that they have both hands. And so that there's an escalation.
There's a
But
beautiful collaboration.
I'm curious though about the Saavik moment personally. Did you ever think, wow, how much emotion, how little, or were you just like, this is right? How did you
It's
feel?
right. I mean, I think that, again, the Romulan thing gives us the liberty to sort of explore, anything. Because, I mean, it to me felt like that changes the mix as well. But also, I mean, even what's interesting about the character Spock is that, I mean, he changes a little bit, too, as he gets older. And of course, we are representing an older Saavik that is wasn't worried, but there is underneath the Vulcan thing. It's almost like it's a decision to be logical, right? I mean, and I think that it felt perfect to me. I mean, it was incredible how it all came together. And there were moments where I was, I'd come to you with like, no, they need to have the hand clasp, because the moment where Spock and Kirk really begin their friendship in earnest is where Spock stops being a robot of the motion picture. He touches V'ger, he has his mind blown, and realizes that the humanity in him is got to come out. That's what V'ger's missing. And I think that the true friendship between Kirk and Spock, almost that we see throughout, when Kirk loses everything, goes back for him in the subsequent movies. It began there, and so when the one thing they would do would be like they're reconnecting. They're almost going back to the beginning of that friendship where they knew that they were grounded in that sense, and that's why I wanted that hand clasp in there. It was just a really important part of the piece. But so many things were added by the team. I mean, the sunset. I wanted to see the end on the hand clasp and go to black. And you're like, no, we got to have something else. And that sunset's absolutely, that's the piece, And so
Right.
it was amazing to sort of have the team and all of us really, expand on the seeds that I think were very solid from the beginning and very specific and end up where we did. It was
almost like a meal, like it's almost, we had all this great lead up to the meeting. So it's almost like you go to a restaurant and they just give you all these appetizers. And then the main course is about to come, and you're not gonna have that. And it was like, wait, So like I think really extending the Kirk and Spock, the goodbye, and really, I think that was great.
Yeah.
And you were open to like, let's just see how far we can take it, and then if we take it too far, then we can always pull it back.
One of my favorite decisions that you made was we were having Kirk walk into essentially the hospital room for the first time and seeing Spock. Little side note, David Collins put the tiniest hint of technology in the sound design of that room to give it the sense of hospice. And Kirk, he walks in the room, and we, as every time, we would do take after take, and we'd refine it and refine it and refine it. And I'd started out with me coming in, and seeing Spock, love in my eyes, or in Bill Shatner's eyes, and then having the realization that, oh, this is goodbye. Am I ready for this? So it went from love to, oh my, this is serious. And then we refined it to eventually where he comes in apprehensive, not knowing what he's going to see, and then he sees Spock, and then the love comes in, and then he walks in. And you chose, and I'm so glad you did this, you chose to go actually with one of the early takes, where he comes in thinking he knows what to expect, and then the enormity of everything sets into his face, and he realizes, oh, he may not be doing so good. He may not be doing so well. And then he takes a tentative step forward. And that set an incredible emotional baseline for coming in, taking his hand. There's almost a little bit of an apology from Kirk. I'm sorry that it took me so long, and all of his stuff. And so the mood was going down and down and down. And then Spock brings the mood up by making a joke to his old friend. And then that brings the sunset. And I love that Spock saw the emotional need in Kirk and goes, he waited out logically and said, what I need to do is make him laugh,
And that lightness was you with your face, the oh my, or the, like your reaction to the eyebrow was your lightness. You added that part. I feel like, on these things, when you work on these kind of films, like for me, I'm always thinking like conflict. Like, what is the conflict? And then a step further, it's like, what is the message? Like, what is the theme? What are we trying to tell here? And I felt like on the 3 takes that you did that were so nuanced, beautifully nuanced, that it was hell to find one. Like, do I pick that one? No, do I? And the reason being is because each one of those ones was always almost giving me a different theme for that reunion at the end. And there was one of the takes where like he's looking, he starts smiling, and then he kind of like looks down, and it was really strengthening the second chances. Like what if I had a second chance with somebody that I thought I was never gonna see ever in my life? And I think it was that one, and when they're holding hands, that I'm by myself on the computer in the basement at our home, and I'm crying. And my wife is like, "Are you okay? Like, should I go in that office?" And I think that's kind of when you see something coming alive.
And I'd like to point out that is what we were doing it for. I mean, yes, there was technology laying over these performances, but the whole key is that we are human beings, and we all have our own wealth of emotional experiences, and both good and bad, joyous and perhaps even traumatic. All of that makes up who we are. And when someone else is experiencing something, we recognize it and we start feeling a measure of what it is that they feel. That's what Jules set out to do. He said, yes, okay, right, we're going to be using the digital prosthetics to help create the likeness of Kirk and Spock. But without human beings in there guiding the journey, and without human beings feeling something and going through something on camera, the audience isn't going to feel anything. That's where our whole project came into focus. This is why we did it. It's what we were doing. It was not about, yes, we had to take the time to get the technical things right, to make sure that get your silhouette right, to get this right, get that right. But then once those things were set, we were off to the races, and all we were talking about was the emotional of the moment, or talking about something personal that we understood, and tried to make a moment happen on camera that might never, ever happen again. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing. Just have the camera on. You're trying to capture something. There, Robin did something. I think that's the one, she had an experience there that maybe we could never replicate if we tried to get it again. And those were the moments that I think made this piece what it is.
This is what's so incredible. It's just that we're having a conversation about acting and performance and nuance and the tiniest little bit of performance that comes through. And we're talking through a digital prosthetic. The technology is so advanced and so subtle and adheres so well to what we're doing that when Carlos says, okay, you don't have, I don't want you to say anything, I just want to see it in your eyes. Show me pride and sadness and action. And you're frozen in this, your body's not moving, but things are happening inside, and the system is capturing that, and it's not a wooden prosthetic. It captures all that subtlety. Right. And that comes through. And that's what's so marvelous about this. We're having a discussion as actors and as a director, and it's all working together with this incredible, miraculous technology that you've concocted.
And I want to say, and there's a fearlessness underneath all of it, Jules, because people like you have integrity, and you're doing these wildly fabulous things with technology. And, Screen Actors Guild, I'm proud to be a member. But, one should feel completely safe in your hands, one's likeness being used. I couldn't wait to get into the bubble with all the cameras. It's awesome. And people like you, with people like you at the helm of all this marvelous technology, we are safe. We are safe to leap in and have fun with it and go with it and play with it.
I have to second that. There was something I was just telling you, which I have to say. We filmed one day at Huntington Garden. This is the beauty of having Jules as a producer, which you don't see in this industry that often. I will say that too. We filmed in Huntington Garden, and the weather wasn't working for us that day. We had planned to do all this on a beautiful, sunny, spectacular weather, and it was raining as early as 8 in the morning. So that didn't work, and we still went ahead and shot all the stuff, and then through the edit, I did a bunch of back and forth. The acting was incredible, as I was noticing, but it was something about the weather wasn't bringing it all together. And I had a difficult conversation with Jules where we were looking at the footage, and you asked me, it's like, what do you think? Yeah. Like, should we do it? And I was not aware of the budget. I almost didn't want to know numbers, because then pressure and intimidation starts to kick in. I just wanted to focus on the creative, and I told you, it's like, I think it needs a reshoot. And I know it's a lot of people. And
we did it.
And you said, we're going to do it. So, the hats off to you.
We are running out of time, sadly. The hour best quickly. But I want to add something, because all of these things, they're fearless to do this. I have to credit my wife, Mahé. So this was our fourth piece. When I started this, it was just, that's when I brought you in, Carlos. It was just her as Cole, because I had no intention of necessarily going out and doing Spock and Kirk. And she, during COVID, she got to add it. She's the one that gave me the courage to go and do this. And bringing her in as the character was just one aspect of it. But I mean, even starting this with you, remember it was you, me, and her, and it's been it's a deeply personal project. All of this is, and as the team's grown and the family behind all this has grown, it truly does feel like it's been an incredible personal journey. And I love you guys, and thank you all for being part of this incredible journey, Ryan. And I hope as Star Trek fans, we made people happy, and we're respecting the legacy of your dad. And hopefully there's much more to be done for the archive and through its works.
Do we have like 3 minutes to show
you wanted to tell me? Well, okay. I mean,
yeah, I just put something together for fun to show that there is people behind these things. So. I put it like at 4 in the morning in between another job. So if you guys want to watch it, I gave it to the folks.
Okay, let's watch it and close it out on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh my goodness.
Here we go. And camera speed, time. All right, here we are. And set. And action.
Wow.
Oh.
I mean, science fiction's filled with magic.
Oh. Wow. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It's just been an incredible journey and much more to come. I think we are ready for lunch, and I think the exhibit hall will be open soon as well. You guys should check it out. Thanks, everyone. This is amazing.
Yay.
Thanks, everyone.